Can you speak a little bit about any interactions or experiences you had with Afeni, both when Tupac was still alive and at the label, and then experiences working with her after Tupac had passed to put out some of the music that you put out through Death Row that was Tupac material?
Yeah, prior to Tupac passing away, I only dealt with Miss Shakur on two different occasions that I remember. I took her shopping with Suge's mother. Us three went shopping in Beverly Hills. Suge gave each one of them $5,000 just to go and buy some clothes. So I took them to lunch and to dinner. Lunch and shopping. Um, and then at the Mother's Day event, saw her, wished her happy Mother's Day, and there. Those are the only times I remember her being in town if she wasn't at the house, either on Wilshire or Calabasas. She definitely was never around the studio or at any video shoots or anything like that. Afterwards, now, the first time I saw her after Tupac's death was at the hotel. We went to the hotel, and she was in a very positive mood then, kind of eerie, in my opinion, to how, but that knowing her now, that was just her way of dealing and coping with his death, because there was a bunch of people in the room, and she was the one being uplifting and encouraging everyone that was in the hotel in mourning, and was like, Pac's in a better place. Pac's cool. He's good. I made the right decision on letting him go, and so that was immediately after his death. So that would have been on September the 13th, probably about 5:30 or 6 o'clock p.m. Didn't see her anymore until then. Got a couple of calls from her because I'm the one that picked up. You got Danny Boy talking about he rolled back with the ashes, and people out there making everybody want to ride with the ashes, but not true. My boy James Green, I wouldn't picked up the ashes, and my boy James Green flew back to him, and she called me a couple of times because they were planning to have a ceremony, which y'all done all heard me speak on, where they went to the beach and they rolled him up in a marijuana joint and smoked him, some of his ashes. That was their way of dealing with it. That was their reasoning for doing it, was because they said they always wanted to have Pac inside them or with them. And so, yeah. Then after that, I'm the one that took him, delivered her the Machiavelli. Everybody always want to call it the euthanasia chain, but it's actually the Machiavelli chain, right, John? It had Machiavelli on it, and not euthanasia, but the big chain. I delivered to her at the W Hotel in Westwood, California, and I gave her the medallion. Kind of felt bad once I gave it to her because the blood stains were still on the medallion, and she thanked me for delivering it to her in the as-is condition. So that was that time. Then, mainly to be honest, the next time I dealt with her was really with her staff, Molly, Tom Wally, his attorney, Donald David were the three that, and Dina LaPoe. And then Outlaws, Edie and all of them, were the ones I kind of dealt with afterwards as far as getting the music together. Me and Edie and some of the Outlaws met at Skip Saylor's studio, where that's when I turned over all the music to him from the vault. That's why I laughed when everybody said Dad stole them. Now everybody don't even know, before we even let Dad start working in the with the music, all the music that we had was turned over to Interscope. Actually, Interscope was supposed to be in like the person we trust, like our escrow. Interscope was going to hold all the music, and then Amaru and us couldn't touch it without each other's permission or authorization. And so that's what happened with the music on him. And that case was, which we'll get into, was, as far as the settlement agreement that we did. There were some issues what we was having on the album. Some of the albums, Suge didn't want Amaru to be on the back in the beginning at the beginning of the agreement. He didn't want to give Amaru label imprint on the back. He was like, Tupac's my artist. He's a Death Row artist. Interscope is the distributor. That's the only name that's going to be on the back. And I don't even know if y'all noticed. I think I came up with the agreement to have no labels on the back to make one of the albums happen. If you see one of those first albums, y'all see there's no label on imprint on the back of any of the albums. I forget which album it was, but it's one of the first ones that was done. But then we eventually, go ahead.
I was just going to say that was the Still I Rise album.
Still I Rise, okay. So Still I Rise album, we didn't have any labels on the back because Suge felt that the Outlaws wasn't his artist and Pac was just a guest appearance, on those albums, so Amaru shouldn't be on the back. We later worked through it, and we ended up putting all three imprints on the back, and that was dealing with mainly her people, meaning Molly, Tom Wally, and Donald David. But I bring that up to say that's when I took her up to the prison personally to visit Suge. And that's where they, I learned they had a good relationship where both of them kind of was like, Suge was a little stern at first and she was a little stern, but it was mainly like a mother-son, how you talk to your mother when you're mad about something that they're not agreeing with. It was kind of a relationship like that they had. It was real, stern. Everybody was holding their position, but they eventually worked it out. She ended up leaving, and when we came back, we had an agreement in place, and we was able to put out 3 or 4 additional albums after that. And so that's why I always get mad at myself, knowing how, and I didn't really understand the era that we were in where people were disappointed with Death Row and mad at Death Row because they thinking they were robbing their artists I didn't really realize or was smart enough to understand how upset the public was with Death Row at the time. And if we would have just did a big press release or press conference saying, hey, we cool, the mama's cool. Everybody's good. Everybody's in a good place. We came up with a deal. We worked out the deal. And I think we would have, Death Row wouldn't have got as much backlash as it did in the 98, 99, 2000 era. But trust me, we were all good because if not, Afeni wasn't a lady that needed a lot of money. She wouldn't have made none of the deals for money. That was the only thing for doing it was making the deals because we all know she did the movie during that point. She did another album with Jive Records. Prior to that, she had a $3 million settlement agreement from us. She was good. So she would have continued to sit on the music or made nobody be able to do anything if we didn't work out the relationship with each other. And so to squash all of that Afeni and Suge had bad relationships or she was upset, that's just not accurate or not the truth. But as we know, the idiot, the groupie say he wasn't ever a Tupac or Tupac was never a Death Row artist, which is the craziest shit I ever heard.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into was what that guy said. So this random guy keeps throwing out documents and accusations about things. In his latest interpretation that he passes on as fact, he states that Death Row Records in 1996, right after Dr. Dre left, their bank account started to always be overdrawn. So I wanted to ask you about that. but then also what he mentioned was how Steve Cantrop, which you've discussed before, was one of the accountants that got caught embezzling money, that he basically stated that he was in hiding because Suge and people went to him and made him sign a false IOU saying that he had taken money, and that basically this guy is just saying that once Dr. Dre left, financial problems started to arise for the label, even while Tupac was still there. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's the craziest thing I heard, because he don't know, because he's a groupie and it's probably not on the internet. But if he go and research it, he might can find this one. We had just signed a $20 million guaranteed year advancement with Universal in August. I remember when we flew back in from Paris, whenever we shot the Michelet video, we flew straight from Paris to New York and went and met with David Kenner, Jimmy Iovine, and what was that guy that ran MCA at the time? Doug Morris. Went and met with them. And Suge was getting $1.5 million advance a month to live off of. Plus, whenever he turned in albums, he was getting, when I say Suge, I'm talking about Death Row. Whenever he turned in albums, he would get a fee, and an album advancement. And he would get also, he had a deal with Time Warner, Warner Chappell, where he was getting music publishing. So that's crazy. But no, it's not as crazy as it sounds, though, because Suge was living off of American Express card. David Kenner had knew about reward points and all of that with airline tickets and all of that stuff. So everything we pretty much did, other than paying people salaries or bills and stuff like that, they put on the Amex card. They were spending probably about $1.5 million on American Express card. So when he got the $1.5 million advancement, he would go and just pay the American Express card off. And so that is how they were kind of living. And they were living month to month based only on things that shit was getting. Like, he had just went out and bought a boat where he paid almost $4 million for, called Simon and stuff like that, from his deal from Warner Chappell, which is all his, has nothing to do with Death Row Records. And so he was buying things, and he had money because he had money coming in. And he had the money coming in from, like I said, every first of the month, he was getting $1.5 million to pay his artists. People don't know, at that time, that's when Snoop was getting $50,000 a monthly. And, prior to Dre leaving, he was getting $125 a month monthly, even though that didn't have anything to do with that particular deal. I don't know what their deal was that Suge was getting monthly prior to that August deal. But there was security bills that was getting paid. There was all type of bills that was getting paid out of that monthly. Did I say Pac? Pac was getting $75,000 monthly. And so, the counts probably was low. I don't remember them being low like that, where nobody worried about checks getting counted, but it wasn't like he had 10 or 15, $20 million sitting in the bank. Now, Suge was spending it on either himself or artists or whatever as he got it. But like I said, he had a guaranteed $20 million a year coming in from Universal at that time. So what Dale Groupie is talking about, I have no idea. Steve Cantrop and David Kenner in about July or August did get caught in Suge mine with their hands in the cookie jar. And so that's when Suge told Tupac to fire David Kenner as his entertainment attorney. Suge Knight fired David Kenner as his entertainment attorney at that time. He had Paul Marshall. Most people don't know Paul Marshall was the one that mainly negotiated a lot of his deals for him with Interscope. Howard Keene. Dre had Howard Keene and Peter Lopez, or Peter Paterno, I forget his name, I think it's Peter Lopez, as his attorneys at that time. And so They all had different attorneys other than David Kenner eventually. But David was the one at a certain time in both of them life. But as an entertainment attorney, Suge was the one that suggested that they get rid of and get their own entertainment attorneys and stuff like that, since they have their own lawyers and I mean their own bank accounts and monthlies and all of that. He was trying to get them all self-sufficient and not just depending on David. And this David handled all the criminal stuff that was going on. So yeah, Steve Cantrock got caught with his hand in a cookie jar and was found because the IRS was lurking around. And when Suge learned that the IRS bills wasn't paid, that's when he started jumping up and down. It was like, hey, y'all gonna go take care of these bills. Y'all gonna go take care of this issue. Or Steve Cantrock, you need to go and tell your bosses what's going on, that you've been stealing from me. You ain't been taking care of the business you're supposed to. Because I want my money and I want this stuff taken care of. So that's the truth. And that's why Steve Cantrock did go into witness protection, not hiding, in witness protection with the FBI. Probably never moved. Just wasn't allowed to go to work at his office back in August. And that was because Suge did. And myself, I'm the other person that was there, went into his house, and we were the ones that confronted Cantrock and David Kenner on that particular night about, stealing. And then on that Sunday, when I wasn't there, but guess who was the other person with him, or whose house they went to at the other person when he was allegedly supposed to took a Rolex from Steve Cantrock that he was wearing at the time, and the next day he went and told his firm what was going on and what was happening to him. The other big bad person was Michelet. It was at Michelet house where all of this took place at. So, yeah, Del Rey, he was roughed up and all of that.